The origins of the Second Amendment, if you read them clearly, it's all about the militia. It's all about who has control of the militia. And many of the southern states were concerned because their militia was very involved in putting down slave revolts, and they were worried that the federal government would take their militia and put it somewhere else. All the debate is about that. Now but this idea that there's an individual right to insurrection, an individual right to change with democratically decided principles is, I think, one of the most dangerous and anti-democratic things we've seen in this country in a long time.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting you mentioned Heller as institutionalizing or enshrining in the Constitution this insurrectionist idea, and there seems to be a schizophrenia within the gun rights movement. On the one hand, they're working through the court system very effectively in some cases and continue to make that one of their main fronts of attack at every level. And they obviously believe in the American judicial system. On the other hand, they're still embracing this sort of paranoid insurrectionist view, the idea that even if we have won these major landmark decisions that enshrine the Second Amendment as an individual right, we're still afraid that the government's not going to honor those decisions and going to come and take our guns anyway.
How much is this about money? I mean, Wayne LaPierre and the NRA execs make over $1 million a year.
Yeah.
They have a giant direct mail campaign, and I think their direct mail vendor actually populates the NRA. Most of the people at the NRA actually, I think, work, or some of them work for this direct mail consultant, Ackerman McQueen.
Yeah.
How much is this about money? How much are these groups gin this up because they know that they can make money on direct mail and things like that?
Well, with the NRA, I mean, it's an industry group, so of course it's about money. With the smaller groups, I think you don't necessarily have to choose. I mean, Alan Gottlieb has made a pretty penny off of
right.
gun rights over the years. He actually has his own direct mail company, which dovetails quite nicely with his gun work. Guys like Larry Pratt, probably more true believers. I don't know how much he's made, but according to his tax forms, it's not very much by these standards. But there's also a lot of, on the activist sort of grassroots side, just a lot of full-time volunteers who really do believe in this issue and aren't making any money. I mean, you go to some of these booths with these really small state-level groups, and they're just volunteers. And they'll talk your ear off about this stuff, and they have day jobs, and they're the ones who are really fueling a lot of these state-level fights.
Alex, I think a lot about what I do. I've been doing this for 25 years. And, someday, hopefully I'll retire and do some other stuff. But, what happens on the gun rights side? I mean, where are they going to go with this? I mean, it looks like when you go to the Gun Rights Policy Center conference, it's mostly old white guys, right?
Yeah.
Who's going to fill
the
they're
shoes? Very aware of this, and it's a huge problem. That's kind of mirrors the problem the Republican Party's base. It's dying. The old white guys are dying, and they're not being replaced by their grandkids. You talk to the industry side at the NRA convention on the floor, and they'll tell you we're making more triggers for arthritic fingers, and the kids are playing video games. They're just, the new generation is not into guns the way their grandparents and parents are. And the demographic drop-off that's looming is a real serious problem for them in the next 20, 30 years, absolutely. That's why you're starting to see more diverse faces in the outreach, in the billboards, in the NRA news shows, in the magazines, that they realize that to survive, they need more women, they need more African Americans, Hispanic Americans, because otherwise the numbers just aren't going to be there to support the fight with the intensity that they're currently fighting it.
Just start with sort of one group, which is women. I've been doing this, as I mentioned, for a while. Going back 20 years, the NRA kept on pushing these stories. Oh, more and more women are shooting. If that was true, we'd have half of the conference would be women.
Yeah.
But that just, I think that's a recycled story that they like to push. But is there any sort of credence to the fact that they are pulling more women? Are they pulling more African Americans into their midst, or is that just wishful thinking?
It's anecdotal, and I think at this point still very much aspirational, but also an aspiration that is increasingly urgent, and I think you're going to see more and more efforts reflecting that.
But if they have that aspiration, how can they have a guy like Ted Nugent?
Well, that's why it reflects the same problem of the Republican Party. Their base and their future are very hard to address at the same time.
I just don't understand how they can keep a guy like Ted Nugent on their board, who has called President Obama a subhuman mongrel. and then expect to go out there and recruit African Americans.
That's the problem. But at their conventions every year, Ted Nugent's their biggest draw. You've got capacity overflowing crowds cheering on his every word. And they have to continue to feed the people paying dues with one eye on the future, and it's not an enviable position.
And so, isn't that sort of the box they're in? I think about it, so they need to scoop up all these, and more, maybe even more right-wing people to fill these seats and make the money flow and to look like they're powerful. But is that going to eventually just backfire because they're alienating the next generation who sees the world in a much more multicultural way?